I'm not really sure how to talk about this book. I'm trying to figure it out, and I guess I'll just figure it out as I go. Um, I read an amazing short story collection by a writer that I knew that I loved, but who I hadn't read very much of. The book I'm talking about is the Avram Davidson Treasury. This is a collection of his short stories from the 60s and 70s, I think also the 50s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, yeah, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Look at that. As you got a whole other decade, you weren't even expecting it. Maybe you know who Avram Davidson is, and maybe you don't. He's a really kind of an obscure writer. Probably needs a lot more recognition than he gets. And I'd heard that and seen that many, many, many times. And I'm absolutely subscribed to that now that I've finished this book. Fantasy and science fiction and just sort of fiction and detective stories and everything. Maybe to help you understand, I'm going to list off the people who provide introductions and afterwords to the short stories in this collection. And of course, I'm only reading names that I immediately recognize. The other names in here might be recognizable to you that I'm not reading off, but I'm not going to read them off because there's a lot of them. Robert Silverberg, okay. Damon Knight, Poul Anderson, Alan Dean Foster, John M. Ford, Guy Davenport. Seems like I should know Guy Davenport. Peter S. Beagle, Frederick Pohl, Ursula K. the Guin, Spider Robinson, Thomas M. Dish, Gene Wolfe, Harlin Ellison, William Gibson, Lucas Shepard, Michael Swanwick, F.M. Busby, Alice Burgess, I think I know Alice Burgess, and Ray Bradbury. All of them write introductions and afterwards to the stories in this collection. They all basically say the same thing. He's an amazing writer, and you should probably read more of him. One of the early stories I really enjoyed was Help, I Am Dr. Morris Goldpepper, in which an alien invasion can only be stopped by the American Dental Association. Never have dentists looked better than in here. And there's this wonderful amount of detail paid to the scene. It's a story where this group of dentists have gathered together to talk about one of their own who had made some sort of who was renowned for making this sort of dental appliance, and that this man had disappeared. Really great. And it's pitch perfect too, because it's exactly those stories that you've read before where this group of, this organization gathers together and says, only we can do this. We can't seek help elsewhere. Only we can stop this event, in this case, an invasion from happening. We're the only ones. No one will believe us. Except here, it's dentists. And it's never played for jokes, but it's also absolutely wonderful and hilarious. That's just one little idea. It's such a small story in this collection. And as the stories go on, the humor becomes less of a part, but there's always a humorous, I don't want to say humorous element. It's not as though he writes these stories to make you laugh, but sometimes the situation is humorous because of what it is. And the writing is just phenomenal. Just so excellent. There's a rather ingenious story, Or All the Seas with Oysters, which is a quote from a Sherlock Holmes story. That one's interesting too because it presents a concept that was often sort of regurgitated as being unique, but has its source here in Avram Davidson, namely, I guess slight spoilers for the story, but I don't think it ruins anything, that paper clips are the larval form of bicycles. Those humorous stories sort of give way to more serious stories and detective stories, but they always have this humorous element. Some of the favorites that I have were The Hills Behind Hollywood High. That was particularly great, featuring what I think we need a lot more of in fiction, which is people in gorilla suits, sort of. Or this callback to planetary romance or sword and planet fiction of Hark, was that the squeal of an angry thoat? That was wonderful. The one I was most charmed by was Manatee Gal, Won't You Come Out Tonight? That was particularly good, in which Davidson creates a unique and fictional country of British Hidalgo in South America. And in fact, he wrote a number of stories in that setting. And there's a published book of that, actually a newly republished version of that. In fact, a lot of Davidson's works are newly being republished, I discovered. There's a collection of the 6 stories that he wrote in that setting, and I am absolutely going to buy that. It was wonderful. Very Indiana Jones-ish, sort of like Indiana Jones or like African Queen, right? Sort of along those lines. Just amazing. Just a really well-crafted story. Sometimes somebody will say when they talk about really good writing, even though I know shouldn't put a quality of good or bad on writing, but let's just go ahead and do that anyways, of good writing. And a lot of times people think that means flowery or extravagant prose, using $10 words, as it were. And that can be done, and it can be done well if done sparingly, although sometimes people can get a little too pretentious with it. What I like about Avram Davidson's writing is not that he uses $10 words, but that he gets $10 worth of work out of a $1 word. And that's the kind of stuff that's how this book is written. It's so well crafted. There are some sentences where you're just like, sometimes when you read something particularly good, you'll kind of stop. It's in the middle of stories. It's this random sentence. And you just kind of stop and go, oh, I like that. That was good. It was really good. These stories are full of it. This book, I guess, which is a collection of stories, is full of it. Now, he did write some novels, and I'm very interested in. One of the last selections in here is a selection from his 3rd unfinished novel, the novel he was writing when he passed, about Virgil, the writer of the Aeneid, as a sorcerer. And it's a fantasy series. He had written the first 2 books, The Phoenix in the Mirror, and then I can't remember what the title of the second book is. But The Phoenix in the Mirror is the first book. And this is an excerpt from the last one. Just really great fantasy. I was very interested. Honestly, I know this might seem like I'm harping a little bit, but that bit of that book reminded me very strongly of Gene Wolfe's New Sun series. It reminded me of that, although not quite as puzzly as Wolfe's stuff is, or Lafferty's, not quite so much. I don't feel that Davidson really writes in a way where he deliberately not deliberately, but he sort of like presents information and you're not really sure what to do with it yet. I don't think that that's not really characteristic of Davidson's writing, but it is somewhat dense. He's very much much like Harlin Ellison, is very much interested in semantics and what words really mean. So if he chooses an unusual word, there's almost certainly a reason for that. Makes for some really rewarding investigation. Similar in a sense to somebody like Ellison, but Ellison is very bombastic. It's very like, all over explosions. That's what I think about when I read an Ellison story. It's just like, whoa, you just kind of like, wow. Davidson's work is a little bit more subdued, but the quality of writing is amazing. Even Ellison says in his afterword that, all the attention that was lavished on him should also be lavished on Davidson, because he's that great. Every one of these people who writes about Davidson in this book said he's an amazing writer, kind of a cantankerous old man, but a wonderful, wonderful person to know. Highly recommend that you find this book, which I think has been reprinted. I got this. This is a used library copy in excellent condition, by the way, which I was pretty excited to have. I started reading this. I talked quite a while ago about the story in here, The Golem, which is a really funny and short story, very entertaining. And I really love those early stories. They're fun and funny, but they do sort of give way to these longer, more lavish stories. And sometimes the writing's amazing. And I kind of want to exit out of this saying what an amazing book this is with a little sample of the reading from Manatee Gals, Won't You Come Out Tonight? Manatee Gals, Won't You Come Out Tonight features the adventures of Jack, Lime Killer, in British Hidalgo, and those Lime Killer stories I think will be very rewarding reads. So here's a little sample of them. 3:30 at the Cupid Club. On Lime Killer's table, the unusual single bottle of beer. Also the 3 chaparitas of rum, which he had bought. And they were in a paper bag, lest the sight of them, plus the fact that he could invite no one to drink them, give rise to talk that he was mean. Behind the bar, Alfonso Key, in the dark, dark back, slowly sipping a lemonade. All soft drinks were lemonade. Coke was lemonade, strawberry pop was lemonade, ginger stout was lemonade. Sometimes, though, not often, for reasons inexplicable, there was also lemon-flavored lemonade. In the dark rear part of the room, resting his perpetually sore eyes, was old Captain Cudgel. "Well, how you spend the night, Jock?" Alfonso, ready for a tale of amour, ready for a quip, ready for a joke. "Oh, just quietly, except for the manatees," Lime Killer said. Lime Killer, saying this, had a sudden feeling that he had said all this before. Been all this before, was caught on the Mobius strip, which life and picturesque Port Cockatoo had already become. Caught, never would be released. Adventure, ha! Very rewarding fantasy and science fiction. I'm absolutely going to be reading more Davidson. I've got a few other Davidson's books. And I've read some of his stuff before. And originally I discovered Davidson in that book that I just keep bringing up and won't stop, the Oxford Book of Fantasy Stories. If you can find a copy, they are cheap. Get it. It's worth it. I think, except for maybe 1 or 2 of those stories, every single one of the 20 or 30 stories in there is a solid gold nugget. It's perfect. It is nothing but diamonds. Okay? Thanks very much for your time. Avram Davidson's Treasury was a wonderful volume, highly recommended. See if you can find something else from Davidson. I guess there's a new push to get his stuff back in print, which I am absolutely behind. So I'm going to be picking up some of those books. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. My name is Virgil, and this is Literally Books. If you enjoyed this, like helps, and subscribe. If you're interested in seeing more of this, is also wonderful. That's it. Bye.